Hello and welcome to FTTR, I'm Hugh McQuaid, and this is a follow-up video to one I've done before. Now I did my 5 favourite wrestling documentaries, but I'm going to change that up a little bit, and this is for anyone who subscribes to the WWE Network. These are my 5 favourite wrestling documentaries that you can watch on the network right now. So number 1 is WWE 24 Keith Lee. Now, the 24 series have actually been really good. The majority of them are all they're either okay to great. There's never been a bad one. And it was a toss-up between the Keith Lee documentary and the Hardys documentary that they did for 24. But the Keith Lee one really gave me a new perspective on the man, Keith Lee. Now, we'll get to see his upbringing, which is something I don't think most people are expecting, but probably the most hard-hitting part of this documentary is more recent times, particularly in the current pandemic, and how that has affected Lee and his family. We get to see his various tryouts for WWE. I think it was 3 times he got rejected. How would you reject Keith Lee? How? But this documentary is phenomenal. It's only an hour long, but it's probably the most emotional, the most heartfelt, and probably the most inspiring WWE 24 they've ever done. So if they can keep up that consistent content with the 24 series, then just make a playlist on the WWE Network, and hopefully they'll be brilliant going forward. So my second documentary is a controversial one, because we had the Ruthless Aggression documentary series, but before that we had the Monday Night Wars documentary series. Now this is a little bit difficult because is it all true? It's very WWE sided. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Monday Night Wars were back in the 90s. WCW, World Championship Wrestling, I think. Oh, I should know that. For some reason I've got World Class Wrestling stuck in my head. It'll be across my face. I'm such a bad wrestling fan. This is WWF on Monday nights, and they were going head to head in the ratings. WCW kept winning, and then WWE came back and eventually won out, buying WCW. And this documentary series chronicles how that all happened from the beginning, the ups and downs, various stars who were involved in both promotions at the time and jumping ship. It's a really, really fascinating look at that. I think it's probably the most consistent, not consistent, what's the word I'm looking for? Most, let's go with consistent retelling of the Monday Night Wars, even though it's a bit one-sided, as I've said. But this is a documentary series you really must watch if you have the network. I only discovered it probably about 2018 was when I first watched it, maybe even 2019, since it was one of the first things that launched the WWE Network. And it's really good, highly recommend it. My third pick for you is one that I didn't know much about this. It's kind of covered in the Monday Night Wars a little bit, but not loads. And that is the rise and fall of ECW. Now, ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, was a promotion that was also going head to head, not on Monday night, kind of, with WCW and WWE in the 90s. And ECW was the punk rock alternative to WWE, WWF, so EWs. And the rise and fall of ECW chronicles how it came to be, how it became this mega hit among wrestling fans, and the downfall and the eventual bankruptcy of ECW, eventually being bought by WWE. Now, this is really good because it tells the story of Paul Heyman, who was the owner and creator of ECW. He is a genius, in my opinion. I think the way he puts together matches is brilliant. The way he tells stories is brilliant. I think a lot of the stuff on the main roster that's been good in the past few years has all been Paul Heyman creative. And seeing how his mind works for building stars, building a company, is really, really fascinating. It's about 2.5 hours, I think. I think it's the uncut version because it was originally a DVD release. It's a really, really good watch that I'd highly recommend. So my fourth pick is an hour-long documentary about someone that I only knew from NXT commentary, and that is Nigel McGuinness chasing the glory, chasing the magic. That's the one. And this follows Nigel McGuinness, who you might know from NXT commentary, and his days in Ring of Honor and how he eventually retired from professional wrestling. Now, Nigel McGuinness, I remember him in TNA briefly, as he was Desmond Wolfe. And I'm just reading the Young Bucks autobiography or biography. I'm so bad at this. The book, there we go, by the Young Bucks. And he's in it actually. He says he's a really nice guy. But the documentary really focuses on his days in Ring of Honor and his eventual dream of becoming Nigel McGuinness in WWE. But it's quite heartbreaking, his circumstances around his retiring from in-ring competition. I think that is one of the more... It's quite an emotional documentary, this. Similar to the Keith Lee one. I think when WWE really focus on the individual documentaries, they work really well. I think it's when they go into this broader scope of looking at the history of the promotion that it becomes a bit watered down and a bit... So, yeah, I would really recommend, even if you don't have a clue who Nigel McGuinness is, I would highly recommend this documentary if you get a chance. It's a really, really good look at independent wrestling as well. Not just coming to WWE, but also the independent scene. And yeah, Nigel McGuinness is a British legend, so yeah, check out that documentary. My final pick, and this is a really obvious one, because it was a really bleak, a really sad, a really depressing documentary that they did. One that I don't think people were expecting, and that is The Last Ride documentary about The Undertaker's final days before he eventually hung up the hat and the coat and the gloves at Survivor Series. Now, this documentary is incredibly hard hitting. It's quite bleak. It's a bit, yeah, it's The Undertaker's final days. We all love The Undertaker. He's one of the cornerstones of the industry. And to see him as this sort of tired old man who's trying to capture that one last perfect match, resulting in some of the worst matches we've ever seen in WWE. Talking the Goldberg match and the Brothers of Destruction versus DX tag team match, both in Saudi Arabia. It's really, really bad. Not the documentary, but the insight that it gives us into his psyche, I guess, and how he will never be fulfilled no matter what he does. And apparently he was fulfilled by the Boneyard match against AJ Styles. So hopefully Undertaker can ride off into the sunset. But The Last Ride documentary is a really brilliant 5-part series. And yeah, it left me lost for words when I first watched it because I wasn't expecting what it was. It's a lot more bleak than other WWE documentaries, which I think is why it's resonated so well with fans, that it's something different. And that I would highly recommend, even if you just get the network for this documentary, I would highly recommend this documentary because it is... Everyone knows The Undertaker. Not everyone knows how he was as a person. Sometimes they just see the gimmick. And it strips away those layers and it gives you a really insightful look into the mind of the dead man. And it's perfect. It's a perfect documentary, perfect series. And those are my recommendations. If you have the WWE Network and you need some binge watching to do, I would highly recommend all these documentaries, and then check out even more. There's more that I've missed off. The Hardy Boys documentary, the 24, all the 365 documentaries are really good. There's a lot of really great content on the network, and I'm not doing like a plug or anything like that. I don't want to be sponsored, but yeah, I'd highly recommend these documentaries. And if you watch to the end, watch the end of my rambling. Thank you very much, and have a good day. Thank you.